Welcome back to the Washington Commanders Declassified Podcast. I am your host, LE. We have Brian in the building. Brian, say what's up to the people.
What's going on? How are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we got Eric in the house. Eric, you want to say what's up to the folks?
Hello, hello. I'm very happy to be here.
And I'm going to let Brian introduce our special guest tonight. Brian, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, so we have a really special guest tonight. We've got Lonnie Nichols, NFL agent of Entourage Management. Some of you might know Lonnie. Lonnie is the NFL agent for our very own Commanders cornerback, Christian Holmes. Lonnie, how are you, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thanks for giving us some time. So as we just mentioned, you are an NFL agent. You, in particular, our very own Christian Holmes, cornerback, selected out of Oklahoma State. At first, I just want to kind of give people some background on who you are, and so you're an agent. How did you kind of get into this business, and kind of tell me something about Entourage Management?
Yeah, so my sports experience actually started back in 2009. I spent 8 years working for the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is where I'm from. From Oklahoma City, born and raised. Went to the University of Oklahoma for undergrad as well as my MBA. But yeah, I started working in sports in 2009, and I was on the business operation side of things, and for me, man, it was just a thing where when I would end up going back to OU to get my MBA, and once I got the degree, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it, and sports has always been my passion. I mean, I've watched every NFL and NBA draft probably since I was 5 years old. I mean, I'm talking about like I think the first NFL draft I ever watched was like the year of Drew Brett, no, when Bledsoe got drafted, and
Wow.
I think the first NBA draft I remember is when Shaq got drafted, and so
Oh, wow.
um, just following athletes and the business side of sports has always been my passion, and so with me having a passion for ensuring that athletes. The thing that kind of triggered it was you guys remember the ESPN 30 for 30 special broke.
Yes.
That was something that was kind of like it was the thing that kind of put me over the it was like it was go like all right this is what you want to do, and so yeah so in 2016 I decided to go ahead and get certified, and I've been an agent ever since. So it's definitely a lot of highs and lows. Just as an example of trying to make sure your client makes the 53-man roster. That's a very stressful time.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so you have to be wired the right way. You have to have your morals have to be kind of set because it is very grueling business. You're constantly I won't say you're recruiting year round. It's definitely like a recruiting season and off season, but for the most part, you're always on. You know what I mean? Like whether you're managing your
Let me
current clients while trying to balance recruiting.
Yeah, let me ask you there when you're talking about recruiting in an off season versus on season.
Mhm.
You were just saying about getting guys on the 53-man roster, and we just did that
Right.
about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So does it slow down now for you? Now that okay, I've got my guys on the roster, they're playing games now. Are you taking a step back now, or is it okay? I'm on to the next chapter, which is looking for opportunities for these guys or looking for my next clients. Like, how does that work right now with you?
It doesn't ever tune down or turn down. I mean, right now is with the college football season underway, you're fully in recruiting mode, trying to get that next
Okay.
batch of clients. And really, I mean, I don't want to say like when the draft is over, you're straight into recruiting, but at least for me, you immediately start going into like trying to identify who you're going to target,
Okay.
doing your kind of your background and research. And then, and that recruiting process really starts in the summer. So, even before guys are reporting to camp, that's both NFL and college in terms of the calendar is concerned.
Yeah.
And then you have your current clients who are maybe guys who are not on rosters, and you're constantly trying to get opportunities for them. So I guess in the sense of your current clients, especially the ones that went through the draft process, it's a little bit easy selling now. Obviously we know that NFL you can get cut at any time, any day, unless you're one of the big name guys. But for the most part, specifically related to like Christian's concern, if there was a such thing as quote unquote cruise control, for
Yeah.
guys who've made the roster, this is the kind of the part where you can maybe breathe on those type of guys.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay. And, so I was reading, you work for Entourage Management, and I was reading some about the different things kind of you guys offer or try to do for your clients. And it seems you guys are like almost like a full service house in terms of, really kind of, not just servicing your clients, but also kind of bringing some opportunities, some branding potential, things like that to your clients, which seems to be a little bit different, or maybe it's something a little bit different than some of the other companies or agents would offer. Can you kind of tell me about that? Kind of giving them that whole experience, not just, hey, I'll work on your contract or try out here or there.
Right. Well, I mean, as an agent in an agency, you try to do as much as you can to allow your guy to focus exclusively on the on the field matters, as well as any type of off the field development that obviously requires his attention. But so you try to aim to do as many of those things as you can. Now, one of the things that I won't ever sacrifice, or we won't ever sacrifice, is if there's some sort of outside party or outside service that could benefit your guy. You always want to do what's best for your guy, even if that means them doing a service that maybe you could possibly provide, but maybe someone else is better suited or better positioned to do so. Entourage as a we consider ourselves like a mid-tier agency. We're not a one-man shop or anything like that. We feel pretty confident in our ability to bring a lot of those big service or big agency type service to our clients. That goes from a marketing off the field perspective, but so yeah, you just try to give as much of that as you can. About the only thing that we're not going to do, and it's just for the protection of the players, is financial advisement. That's just something that there should be a checks and balances system there, and so that's about the only service we won't do for a guy. But anything else that we can do, we try to definitely do as much as we can to give them full service.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though, because I know, outside of the business aspect, a lot of times agents are just more than guys that procure contracts for their clients, right? Like you mentioned sometimes the highs and the lows, but you're working around the clock oftentimes, right, to make sure your client feels comfortable with the process. Talk to me what kind of roles you play, personally for your clients, and maybe specifically Christian, in terms of support.
Perfect question. Perfect. So it kind of goes back to especially early on in their careers. You want to, as an agent, you want to do your best to allow your guy to focus on as much on the field matters as possible. There are certain things that you just can't avoid from an off the field perspective that requires your client's attention. Finding a place to live or a vehicle, things of that nature. But you really do try your best, because as you guys all know, especially when you're a late round rookie or you're a PFA type rookie, it's very difficult to secure and lock up that roster spot. And even then, right when you think you've done it, because of something else happening on the roster, you could easily be either demoted now to the practice squad or just outright cut just in general. And so you're really trying to do those things as much as you can. I mean, I've done things as far everything from help create budgets to you're looking for just like the smallest of things in terms of something that your client like asks for your help with. So you're constantly just trying to do those things. At the end of the day, you want his focus, especially going into his first training camp, as he's trying to either make the roster or secure his roster spot, or wherever he is kind of in that range of his position on the team, you just really want to hone those things down. But at the same time, and I don't want to make it sound like you're trying to babysit you. I've told Christian this as well. We wanted him to focus on the football as much as he possibly could. But at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice the development of the man at the same time, because the last thing that you also want, you have to keep in mind, these guys, they're the best at what they do, and they've probably been the best on their team, amongst the best on their teams, their entire athletic life.
Yeah.
And so, especially when they get to college, everything is kind of set for them. Schedule is set. Everything's done for. They have advisors and people like that kind of step in. They have tutors. Everything is really structured. And then you get to the NFL, and while things are still structured from a football perspective, your personal kind of perspective, that's just kind of like figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
There's no official structure except for whatever the agency or agent or that player support system can establish for them. So at some point, these men are most likely going to grow into fathers and husbands and have families of their own, and going to be leading their families, as they progress through their careers. And depending on their current relationship status, whether they're dating someone very serious, or maybe they're not dating someone very serious, or maybe they're already engaged. You want your guy to be able to develop into a man that can lead his family properly. And so you don't want to do so much to where the guy is just handcuffed in some of the smallest tasks, in terms of like, how do I budget for my family, or how do I, find, just how do I buy a car? I mean, that's, if you ask a lot of agents, like one of the things that you'd be surprised, probably, I think our fans would probably be surprised about, is a lot of guys, and obviously this is not all guys, but a lot of guys have very limited to no experience buying a car. And so it's like, hey, can you help me with this? How do you do that, or whatever? And so it's definitely a balancing act. But in the rookie year, you're definitely a lot more hands-on in terms of just trying to do as much as you can for the guy. And a lot of it also depends on the player. Some players need more attention than others. There's nothing wrong with that. Some guys are more like, I'll figure it out, or let me do it on my own. The great thing about kind of making this full circle thing, the great thing about Christian is he's very much of a, like, he'll do something first, and then if he needs my help or something, then he'll come back around, like, all right, I could use some help with this. But he's going to do it, or he's going to do a lot of the legwork first, and that's just his mentality. He comes from a fantastic family, and he's wired in a way that he's very much I'm gonna try to do this stuff as much as I can on my own, because I don't want to rely on someone else for my livelihood. It's a very alpha mentality he has. So it's always a lot of it depends on the client too, and their personality, how they kind of go about things. And as an agent, you try to maneuver and adjust to the guy that you're dealing with.
All right, no, that's a great answer to that question, because I was watching that GQ little episode on YouTube where they talk about how the athletes spend their first million, and usually sometimes like, I put 500,000 on jewelry, I gave 100,000 to the hood, I bought 200,000 in Jordans, but your role is really to help them kind of shape that idea where they're going to go with that initially, because like you said, they've never been exposed to financial wealth in any sense, in any means. So I'm glad to hear you say that. All right, one more for me. How confident were you guys going into the first and second round of cuts that Christian was going to be okay and going to be on the roster?
Yeah. So I won't exaggerate and act like we were like completely comfortable and we were 100% confident he was going to make the team. There were some nervous conversations, there was some roster analyzing, there was some. And then as an agent, it doesn't matter what I think. My job is to also prepare for plan B, or if this doesn't work, what's the next course of action? So, it wasn't something where I was so confident that I didn't plan. And even if I was that level of confident, I still would have planned just in case I was wrong. for the next course of action. But the way I would describe our confidence, Christians as well as myself, and I don't want to leave out. I don't want to act like I have my guy Daniel Favre co-reps Christian with me as well. So all three of us would probably describe our confidence as as optimistically confident, or that he was going to make the team, or we felt pretty good about it. And the reason why is that this obviously, my example, you're going to be able to find a similar player somewhere else in the league under similar circumstances, and he got cut. So it's not to say that our logic was without fault, but for us, it was just a matter of we knew that the Commanders really liked Christian. Christian was an interesting prospect, and you might have to remind me of the questions. I kind of take you through this quick journey real quick, so I might forget the essence of your question. But Christian was an interesting prospect in that one of the things as agents when we're recruiting is we're constantly trying to get feedback from scouts to determine, hey, how good is this guy am I recruiting? Where do you guys see? Because it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what the player thinks. All that matters. It doesn't matter what NFL the media scouts think. All that matters is what teams and their representatives think. And so I was talking to scouts. I was talking to some of the All-Star game scouts, and we were just at first we just weren't hearing very good feedback. Like he's a PFA at best, yada yada yada. And I'm watching, and because I'm in Oklahoma City, I'm in Big 12 country, so I watch. And as an OU alum, I obviously have a keen interest in the Big 12. And I watched every game Christian played for 2 years. I've essentially kind of been talking to him for 2 years. And this past season, what I was watching, and I'm not going to act like I'm an NFL level scout in terms of my ability to gauge talent, but I've been doing it long enough, and I've done the work behind the scenes to do my to increase my ability to be less reliant upon needing that scouting feedback to be able to gauge a player's talent. And I'm watching this guy lock up guy after guy after guy, week after week after week. I mean, physically just dominating men. I mean, just physically dominating some of the most physical receivers in the Big 12. And I'm like, I don't see a guy that's a PFA. I see a guy that's a top 20 corner in this country and top 20 corner in this draft. I don't get, there was some sort of, what's the difference here? And I spoke to one AFC scout, and this is what turned the tide. I spoke to one AFC scout, and he said, Lonnie, if you can get Christian, lock him up now, because he is a guy no one's talking about him as far as the media is concerned. But in my circles, this dude is a riser. Get him now.
Wow.
And it was all systems go. Luckily, because I had been speaking with Christian for 2 years, we had already built a pretty good rapport. And through that, we get this guy who indeed was a late riser. He was a guy that 2 of the 3 major All-Star games were very close to and were trying to invite to their game at the last second and just didn't have the space. We had team after team tell us, yeah, man, we like him. We had, I would say, a little bit less than a quarter of the teams that had a mid-round grade on Christian. Okay. And one of the teams that early, that was early enough and said, we like him, and we don't just like him, we like him a lot, was Washington. But we didn't think Washington was going to be in the picture because Washington said that, and then we didn't hear anything from them for a few weeks.
Yeah. And
so, but all 32 teams checked in on Christian at least a couple times. I would say the 2 weeks leading up to the draft was the craziest. Because every team essentially wanted to know who else likes him. Who else are y'all talking to? Because every team had a draftable grade. There wasn't one team that we spoke to that didn't say we would draft that we would not draft him. We just like him as a PFA. Every team said they had a draftable grade on him. And so the question that teams had was, who else y'all talking to, and how high are teams saying they're going to draft? Because so basically they're trying to see how late could they wait before they could. Because if a team can get you after the draft, they'll happily do so. They'd rather spend that draft pick somewhere else.
Right.
And so, with as we're going through the draft, we didn't think that he was going to make it out of the draft. We thought he was for sure going to get drafted, but I'm not going to lie, as the draft was unfolding, we were getting nervous because the teams that liked him the most, the teams that we spoke to the most, which it did not include Washington at the time, all those teams had him as a guy to target in the 5th round. And when the 5th round came off the board, we were kind of like, okay, wow, okay, so we may be on a fight on this one. And so, but keep in mind, Washington was one of the first teams that came to us in the draft process and said that they like him as a draftable player, but we just didn't hear from them for a few weeks. So, true to form, they're the team that pulled the trigger. And so it was one of those things where, I had expressed to Washington during the draft that we had every team that spoke to us, and that we had some teams that we felt like were as a great opportunity as Washington was for him to make the team. So there were other situations that we were comfortable with if the draft unfolded in a manner that he went undrafted, and the decision was then left up to us where we were going to go. Now, one of the things that we did to prepare Christian in the event that he goes undrafted was we sat down and explained every team situation. And to us, Washington, along with the Chargers, were the two teams whose cornerback rooms we liked the most because A, they had the least amount of corners on the roster at the time of the draft, and B, we felt like those were the two places that Christian could go and have the best chance of making the team. And so for us, we were so to go back to your question about how confident, we knew Washington liked them a whole lot. And we liked the setup of the room. We knew what the room was when he first arrived. We felt like it was a winnable situation for him to go in and make an impact and secure a roster spot. And just, one of the things that as an agent you're doing, you're constantly getting feedback from your client. Hey man, how's it going? What's the reps like? What are you, who's going in before, who's going in after? What are coaches saying to you? Try to gather like little tidbits and tips that you can gather. And so through all the data and all the information that we could gather, we all felt, while we knew him getting cut was a very real possibility, we felt confident in him making the team because A, we also felt confident that and just as Coach Rivera said, we felt pretty confident that if he was cut, they were going to be cutting him with the intention of putting him on practice squad. But we felt that if he were cut, he was going to get claimed on waivers based off the activity that we had leading up to the draft. And so I one of the things that we told Christian was, I don't think Washington wants to risk that. They may have preferred to maybe develop you a little bit more and put you on practice squad, but they knew that there was a real possibility you may not even make it there because some team was going to claim you. And man, it worked out the way we thought. And so, I'm sorry, very long-winded answer, but we felt pretty good about his chances. We were a little nervous, but we felt pretty good about the work he put in. We felt like he did enough during OTAs, during camp, during the preseason to lock up that spot.
For the record, we knew right away after very early on in the offseason, based on the way the team was talking about him, it was like, there's no way they're going to let this guy go. So.
Yeah. And that was our feeling as well. But once again, obviously as the client, you just don't know till you know, because I'm sure there's dozens of players who felt the same confidence, and they're not on the active roster right now.
For sure.
So what I need to know is these are the football guys, these other two. I need to know your craziest recruiting story. I need your Jerry Maguire moment as an agent.
The thing is, I don't really have any crazy ones. I've been lucky enough.
It could be about other people too. That's fine.
I I don't know how this is not necessarily crazy as much as it is a real possibility. Sometimes we're recruiting guys. You have to keep in mind, you're recruiting guys who range in age between 20 and 23 years old. These their brains aren't fully developed yet. They and I try to remind myself of that daily because as agents you deal with a bunch of just weird stuff like you have a really good rapport with a guy and then he just weirdly just goes ghost on you. He stops communicating. You don't know why. But I would say that the most weirdest, and I wouldn't even say it was weird as much as it's just something that agents deal with, is there was a guy at it was a Big 12 school that was not in the state of Oklahoma, so it was a bit of a drive to get there. And I was recruiting two guys at one school, and I already established a meeting with one guy, and since I was going to be up there at the school, I told the second guy, "Hey man, I'd love to meet with you. I'm going to be there anyway. Love to shake your hand, introduce myself in person to you." And he said, "Okay, cool." This was not a short drive. This was a 5-6 hour drive away, and drive up there, meet with the first guy. That meeting went great. Immediately text that guy, "Hey, where can I meet you at? I'm here." And the guy never texts back.
Oh.
And I just had confirmed that meeting 24 hours before. And I did not hear from that guy again for a whole year, because what ended up happening was he had every intention of going to the draft that year. Draft grades weren't what he was hoping for, so he returns back to school, and that year doesn't go as well as he had hoped, and so he calls back or text, "Hey man, are you guys still interested in recruiting me?" And it's kind of like, "Man, I ain't heard from you in a year."
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily qualify as weird. I've been lucky or fortunate to have any kind of weird random things. I mean, you do get the occasional, like, I had a guy ask me you get the occasion, like, "Can you pay for this?" or "Can you help get this fixed?" And it's like, man, I don't roll like that. That's just not not something I do. I'm not going to buy you, love or nothing like that or whatever. So you do get that from time to time, but I've been lucky enough not to have any like weird random recruiting stories. Unfortunately, sorry, man, I'm a little bit of a bore on that one. Boring.
No, that's okay. I was just
Yeah.
it was Lincoln, Nebraska that you were driving to, by the way. Anyway, you can just blink twice if I'm right.
Not Lincoln, Nebraska. Not Lincoln.
Okay.
School in the Big 12. School in the Big 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that's 6 hours from Oklahoma City. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Well,
yeah, now that's awesome. I guess that's your pipeline, mainly Big 12 or primarily Oklahoma.
Well, I would say the footprint of the Big 12. So I use the word footprint because any schools that fall within it. So I definitely try to recruit schools, like SMU, A&M, and I go outside of that footprint, from time to time. But it's just kind of recruiting smart, especially when you're not with a big agency and have that big agency recruiting budget where you can just go across the country all willy-nilly. It's just recruiting smart, and then just like colleges have been recruiting since the beginning of time, right? And most schools, the goal is to lock down your state, lock down the neighboring states, and then you kind of build out as needed. But so that I've essentially taken a similar approach to my recruiting tactics, which I think. And I tell a lot of newer agents that's the best way to do it. You have some new agents that they just want to go out and chase everything. Oh man, I want to go check this guy at Oregon, and I'm going to go check this guy at Penn State, and I'm gonna go down to Miami. It's like, man, you gonna learn real hard, real quick. That's not where it's at, man. That's not how you go about things.
Oh, well,
So,
great, great.
yeah.
Lonnie, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes,
Yeah.
talking to us about, kind of the things that you do behind the scenes, and also filling us in on Christian, because I know for us here in particular at Commanders Declassified Podcast, we really like Christian. We think, I think there's certainly a place for him within this cornerback room. There's opportunity there, and we definitely think he can help us. So we're excited to get to see him play a little bit more here, hopefully in Detroit this weekend. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on and talking to us, and we'll hopefully maybe talk to you a little later.
Yeah, anytime. And I would just say to the listeners, just super quick, Christian is mentally wired the way you want a corner to be wired. He's a perfectionist about his craft. And so Washington has a great guy that I think over the course of the next few seasons is going to really turn into a really good player. So,
Yeah, hey, Lonnie, we're gonna get you back when Christian gets his first interception. We're gonna bring you back so you can talk about how he celebrated. All right.
There we go.
perfect.
Yeah. All right, Lonnie. Thank you, man.
All
Hey,
right, no
thank
problem.
you.
Thank you. All right.